Welcome to session 12.
These are the learning outcomes for this session.
So session 12 is all about celebrating the patient's success. Again, we start off the session by scoring how they're progressing towards their nutrition goals, their physical activity goal, and the lifestyle goal that they chose in session 1 or they re-chose throughout the program. And then we just have a discussion about or congratulate your patient on completing the program, and then we'll actually move on to weighing the patient. Doing their waist circumference and inputting their steps. So then we move on to revisiting some of the tools that we used in session 1, and this is the program doesn't finish after session 12, because what we want to do is compare how they were have a snapshot of how they were in session 1, we compare it to session 12, and then the idea behind using some of these tools is to help motivate the patient towards their journey where they will be moving forward towards the 6-month and 12-month evaluation. So then we can, similarly to we did in session 1, we can move around, play with have a look at what they originally were, and then use the avatar to move to a more better representation of what they're actually at the moment after the 12-week program. You can also use this as a motivation towards losing some extra weight, where we can get back towards a healthy weight range. So then we move on to our health risk graph, which you remember from session 1. If they haven't already decided to start exercising, we can use this as a tool moving forward as a motivation for the patient, whether we can have that discussion around even lowering their blood pressure even further, and if they haven't already quit smoking, how this impacts their actual health age, and then we can use this again as a motivational tool to lose some extra weight between week 12 and their 6-month follow-up to show a representation of their risk of developing those chronic diseases. Then we move on to our lifestyle questionnaire, which we completed in session 1, and this is all about comparing their lifestyle, and in the back end we'll be able to see how they compared from session 1 with the stress they have in their life, how often they're smoking cigarettes, whether they've reduced completely, how much stress they have in their life, and they'll subjectively score that. They have a support system, yes or no. Maybe at the start they didn't, and now they've got a support system even within yourself, and how they're progressing towards reducing screen time compared with they were in session 1. Then we move on to a little bit about their diet, if they're eating a well-balanced diet daily, yes or no, how often they're eating out, whether it's buying coffee or energy drinks, sodas or snacks daily, and their alcohol consumption. And then a little bit about their exercise. Now they might have started their resistance training, and so you can see here now we've actually have their monthly budget. Again, we can compare this to, these are all fictitious numbers obviously, we can compare to their lifestyle that they had previously in session 1. Then we go on to measure their the depression, anxiety and stress scale, and we want to do the same thing. We just want to enter the numbers that we add up from the depression, anxiety and stress questionnaire. Then we go on to asking similar questions to session 1, where we want to know about their eating habits and how many serves of fruit they're consuming per day compared to session 1. Then we go on to serve of vegetables. If they couldn't quite remember, we can click on the tab. How many cups of sugary drinks they're consuming per day, per week, per month. So we'll just click on those. And how often they're eating out, whether with takeaway foods, burgers, chips, pizzas, or other kind of junk type foods. We move on to some other questions about their eating habits and around portion sizes. So again, we can revisit if they've forgotten portion sizes with steak, vegetables, and this is in relation to a large dinner plate and all-in-one dishes. Then we can move on to questions about how many days have you cooked dinner at home and how confident they are. So we're in session 1, if they scored down here, hopefully by session 12 they'll be up around this region. If they still have some issues around being confident cooking, again you can have that discussion and refer them to the resources pack. We move on to the eating questionnaire. We just enter the data. Again, if they are scoring higher, then it will red flag, and you again at this stage you'll consider referral to the GP. They go on again and do their 24-hour food recall. Again, we just add up the serves that they're actually consuming. We just enter the number of serves per day. And then it opens up the discussion about meeting their recommended daily serves according to the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. Then you could actually, if the patient isn't meeting their recommended daily serves, then it opens up the discussion about how they could include, for example, breads and cereals, maybe 2 more serves in their day, or an extra 1 serve to half a serve of meat or meat alternatives. Then we move on to some other questions about physical activity, about the frequency, their sedentary activity, and how regular they are with being physically active. Again, we move on to alcohol. So this is comparing session 1 to session 12 and how many standard drinks, for example, they're consuming on a typical day when drinking, and how many alcohol-free days a week they normally have now. We go on to some questions about pain and whether the weight reduction that they experienced throughout the 12 weeks has actually impacted on the chronic pain that they might have. At this stage, because our patient has chosen their goals and they still are progressing towards their nutrition, physical activity or lifestyle goal, then We go again and score it, and then if the patient is still scoring at the lower end of the scale, then we can refer them to the resources pack. So we review our nutrition goal, our physical activity goal, and our lifestyle goal. And then what we do at this stage would move on to some questions about the patient's experience throughout the program. So at this stage, you might want to leave your patient to read the questions themselves, whether they feel comfortable or not, with just reading through and clicking and scoring. You could either go away and leave the room and just leave the patient there, or go off and do something else. But what we really want to do is get an honest opinion about the patient's experience throughout the program. So they're just some questions around evaluating the facilitator. Did he or she really find out what your concerns were? We move on to some other questions about the facilitator. We recommend that the patient just fill these in themselves. Again, some more questions about the facilitator. And then we thank the patient for their continued effort throughout the program. So now we come to the end of session 12. Down the bottom we also have a practitioner survey. Once the patient has either left the room or completed their session, you can move on to the practitioner survey. If we just click on that, we'll be asking some similar questions around your actual experience throughout the 12-week program. And then we just click on the answers that apply. And we have a box here where we can add some extra notes if need be. So that completes the end of our 12-week program. At this stage, we'll remind our patient that there is a 6-month and 12-month follow-up, so we can track how the patient progresses without the weekly intervention. And the 6-month and the 12-month evaluation is exactly the same as session 12, which you just completed. So it's just the evaluation at 6 months, and then we click through as we would normally do with each session.